Hi there, and welcome to the show. All right, today we're going to talk about bonding and we're going to talk about pH, two wonderful subjects. All right, here we have our periodic table. And on the periodic table, there's a couple of minor things that we need to know right now. Well, they're not really minor, but we're not going to learn the whole periodic table right now. What we are going to learn, though, is that typically what we see on this side is a positive charge, and over here, we're going to see a negative charge, except right here, there's no charge. These are what we would call happy. And those happy molecules or atoms, those are those elements right there. They're typically not going to react with any other elements. All right, bonding. Let's take a look. All right, the bonding, there's different forms of bonding. There's three of them that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about covalent, we're going to talk about ionic, and we're going to talk about hydrogen bonding. All right, so covalent bonding, this is sharing. Look at that. Sharing is caring here. We have hugging going on. And we have here a hydrogen atom. Let's go back over here. Here's hydrogen on the periodic table. So hydrogen has an atomic number of 1, which means it has how many protons? Absolutely. 1. Yes. So it has one proton, which means it has, yep, 1 electron. So let's take a look. So here's that 1 proton of hydrogen in the nucleus. Remember, protons and neutrons are in the nucleus, and then the electrons are out here outside in the shell. So we have 1 electron out there. Now how the shells actually fill up, let's just say here is our nucleus, and you can see this first shell has 2 in this outer shell. So in this valence shell, it has 2 electrons. If it has 2 and it's out in that first shell there, and that's the only shell there is, it's happy. So it fills up those 2, then it jumps to the next one and it fills up those and it's happy when there's 8 out there. So let's go back to the first shell. All right, so we said hydrogen had 1 proton and therefore 1 electron in a neutral atom. And so here we have 1 electron out here in our first shell. Is it happy? No, it's not, because it's supposed to have 2. Remember, it's got to be 2 to be happy. So it's not happy. Well, here's another one, and it's not happy either, because it's only got 1 out there. So let's make everyone happy. And these 2, if you put hydrogen together, then they share those electrons. Look at that. And now they're both happy. So problem solved. All right, same thing over here with oxygen. Oxygen's the same way. It's going to share its electrons in that outside ring. And so because of that, it's going to be happy as well. All right, so covalent is the sharing of the electrons. Then we move over here to hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding occurs between polar molecules. And I want you to think about polar molecules in the sense of, you want to think about poles. You want to think about the North and South Pole. Where are they at? They're opposite each other, aren't they? One's on one end of the world, one's on the other end. They're on opposites. When you think about the poles on a magnet, there's a positive and a negative side, opposites. So in water, it's considered a polar molecule because it has, remember, water is H2O, 2 molecules of hydrogen, 1 molecule of oxygen. The hydrogen has a slightly positive charge. You can see that little squiggle there, and then a plus sign. That's a slightly positive charge for the hydrogen, and then the oxygen has a slightly negative charge. And so, because it has the slightly negative charge there, that is going to, they're going to attract to each other. And so because they attract to each other, then you can see all of these hydrogens are going to attach to an oxygen. And so this hydrogen here with an oxygen, this hydrogen here with an oxygen, this hydrogen here with an oxygen. And so there's a lot of great qualities because of this water being a polar molecule. That's why it's called a magical substance. It's wonderful. All right, another type of bonding is ionic bonding. This is where you gain or you lose an electron. Remember, we want that outside shell full. That makes the atom happy. It makes it stable. It makes it unreactive. Kind of like, you know, if you go to fill up your plate for dinner and it doesn't have everything on it. All right, well, maybe that's not a good idea because probably some of you don't want everything on it, like those vegetables. We talked about those. All right, so ionic is gaining or losing electrons. So here is our electron. Here's sodium. It's got a +1 charge because, remember we talked about neutral atoms. Now we're not at a neutral atom because here's what we're looking at. Sodium has 11 in, its atomic number is 11. So it has 11 protons, it has 11 electrons. We start by filling up the first shell, 1, 2, and then we put 8 in the next shell. So that gives us a total of 10, 2 in the first, 8 in the second, but then there's only 1 in that outside shell. That's not happy. That's really not happy at all. So let's look at chlorine. Chlorine has 17. 2 in the first, 8 in the second, that gives us 10. That means 7 is going to be in that outer shell. It's not happy. It's seemingly better off than sodium, but it's still missing 1. So what's going to happen is sodium is going to give its electron to chlorine. And so then chlorine has 8 in its electron, and sodium then would have 8 in its outer shell now. So it would be happy, and chlorine would be happy. By the way, sodium chloride is table salt. All right, so just to recap, ionic bonding is this donating or this accepting of electrons. Covalent is the sharing. Think of that prefix co, means together. And then polar covalent is you have a partial negative and a partial positive charge. Okay, let's move on into why this is important. Okay, so the water has this amazing property, these amazing properties. So this cohesion, remember co means together. So cohesion means the molecules will stick to each other. So they're attracted to each other. And it causes this surface tension. Looks almost like a, well, it doesn't look, but it creates almost like a skin on the top of water. Then we have this adhesion, where molecules are attracted to other things. And we end up with capillary action, where water can climb up the sides of things. So back to the cohesion, because of this surface tension, because those molecules stick to each other and causes that surface tension, we have the water strider that can zip along. And you can see, looking here, it almost looks like there's like a skin on there. Adhesion, with them attracting to each other. Then we're looking at the capillary action. When we looked at in the graduated cylinder and you saw that little U thing that we called a meniscus, the reason why the water sticks to the sides of that graduated cylinder is because of capillary action. All right, and this is how trees get, you think, okay, if the water comes up through the roots, how does it get all the way out to the leaves? Well, that's why. These xylem here, these water conducting cells, they're like these tubes all throughout the tree. And the water goes up through there, but because those tubes are so, look at the size here, pay close attention to that, 100 micrometers. That's really tiny. So you have to have it small so that the water's going to be able to stick to the sides. You can't have a big giant area. There's only so far that the surface area or the surface tension is going to be able to work, but it can climb up the sides. And then there's other things that will draw it up using things like transpiration from the tree, but it goes up through these tubes. All right. We did talk about aqueous solutions. Solution is where one or more substances are evenly distributed. So it's just going to continue to go from high concentration to low until it reaches equilibrium. So an example of this is salt dissolving in water. Now, polar molecules, polar easily dissolves in water. Nonpolar does not, which is why water's polar, oil is not. Oil and water do not mix. Acids and bases. When, okay, here we move into the pH chart, the pH scale. So when a hydrogen is stripped away from a covalent bond, remember the sharing bond, it leaves as an ion. This is called a hydrogen ion. So now that electron is gone here, so it gives it a positive charge because it's got one less electron. If it's stripped from a water molecule, it leaves a hydroxide ion. So OH minus is a hydroxide ion, H plus is a hydrogen ion. Okay, so covalent bonds of water often break spontaneously. This is called ionization. So water is split into hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions. On the pH scale, we have 0 to 14 and 7 being neutral on that pH scale. Now what we do is the pH scale is used to determine how acidic or how basic something is compared to pure water. Pure water has a pH of 7. It is neutral. All right, let's look at the scale here. So here's our pH scale, and a good way to remember this is 7 is neutral, 0 to 6 is acidic, 8 to 14 is basic. Think alphabetically. A comes before B, doesn't it? So acids are going to come before bases. Oh, that way you'll never forget that acids are the lower part of the scale and bases are the upper part. Okay, we're going to stop there with let's go back here with the pH scale. We're going to stop here for today, and that's it. That's the end of our show. Thank you for being here today.